Hi there, hello, my name is Clifford Bates and welcome once again to reading Machiavelli's Discourses. We continue today looking at Book 2 of the Discourses, today looking at chapter 14, 14, that is over there, chapter 14, which again the title is Often Men Deceive Themselves, Believing that Through Humility They Will Conquer Pride. So therefore this is the question that they believe, the people think the humility they conquer pride. In other words, this is a deception. So let's go look at this. This is going to be here. It's not going to be. It's going to be shorter than the last video a little bit, but let's go look at it. It is often seen how humility not only does not help but hurt, especially used with insolent men who, either by envy or by another cause, have conceived hatred for you. In other words, people who are, humility is not always the best strategy, but in other words, used by insolent men who by envy or another cause have conceived hatred for you. They don't like you, and that therefore in other words, it's just, no. That if they're coming to you and they're this idea that they're going to act human, no, it doesn't work. They're insolent. They're really insolent. And you're not going to buy their humility. Our historians vouch. Now, make faith. Make faith, give testimony, vouch. For this in this cause of war between the Romans and the Latins. For when the Samnites complained to the Romans that the Latins had assaulted them, the Romans did not wish to forbid such a war to the Latins, desiring not to anger them. Right? In other words, they did not want to. The Samnites complained to the Romans that the Latins had assaulted them, and the Romans didn't want to forbid such a war to the Latins, desiring not to. He didn't want to anger them. This not only did not anger them, but made them become more spirited against them, and uncover themselves as enemies sooner. In other words, again, Livy 8:2. In other words, that this faults the Latins by saying, "Oh, we're going to let them do it." Well, wait a minute. This made it kind of obvious that it made them become more spirited, the Latins, and uncover themselves as enemies sooner. In other words, that the Romans are the enemies, right? Uncover themselves enemies. The words used by the aforementioned Ennos, the Latin praetor, in the same council vouch for this, where he says, "You have tried their patience by denying them soldiers. Who doubts that they were enraged? Yet they endured this pain. They heard that we are preparing an army against the Samnites, their confederates, and they are not moved. They have not moved from the city. Whence this so great restraint of theirs? It's not from consciousness of our. It's not. If not, sorry, it's not. If. In other words, what is their restraint? If not from their consciousness of our strength and theirs, right? This is again. This is quoted from Latin with two substantial admissions. He says. Things that are not added in the text of Livy 8:4, right, of Livy's history. How much the patience of the Romans increased the arrogance of the Latins is therefore very clearly known from this text. In other words, the Latins' patience. In other words, the patience of the Romans increase the arrogance of the Latin. In other words, they did refuse to do something. They refused to act. And yet a prince should never wish to fall short of his rank, and should never let any anything go by accord, wishing to let it go honorably, except when he can, and it is believed that he can, hold on to it. In other words, you don't let things just go. In other words, a prince should never wish to fall short of his rank, and should never let anything go by accord, by an agreement, by some kind of thing like that, something happening, wishing to let it go honorably, except when he can, and it is believed that he can, hold on to it. In other words, keep control. In other words, he can keep control. In other words, he will only do it if he thinks he can keep control. But for when the thing is brought, when he believes you can, hold on to it, right? For when the thing is brought to such a point that you cannot let it go in the said mode, it is almost always better to let it be taken away through force than through fear of force. In other words, let it be taken away through force. And in such a mode, it's better to have them take it by force than through the fear of force. For if you let it go through fear, you do it to avoid a war. And most often, you do not avoid it. In other words, there are two reasons. You agree to something out of fear. You're doing it to avoid a war, but you don't avoid the war. You avoid the problem, but you don't avoid it. It will come. They see that you're fearing it, and therefore that will double their pride, their thing. It's better to let it fall through a direct attack, because then you don't avoid it. For he to whom you will have conceded this, and uncover your cowardice, will not stand still, but will wish to take other things away from you, and will get more inflamed against you, since he esteem you less. Again, this is the Hitler in Munich point, right? This is Hitler in Munich. This is what Machiavelli is giving us, is the argument about Hitler in Munich. That, Hitler wanted a war. Hitler wanted a war. And he was angry he didn't get this idea that, he was satisfied, he got something. No, he wanted a war, he didn't get it. But that he wanted the war. And in fact, it would have been better for everyone that we had the war in Czechoslovakia, that the Sudeten lands were not given away, that this would have stopped Hitler. The German army in 1938 was not, even in 39-40, wasn't, it could have been stopped by the French if the French had different tactics and different leaders. It was not, in other words, the French had better equipment, better things, is that their moral character, the soul of the French was too weak. Their virtue was lost in that sense. But in 1938, if the Czechs weren't going to, they could have stayed and fought. They kept the Sudeten with the mountain forts and the Skoda works and their equipment. And therefore, if they did not give it up, in other words, the English and the French stripped the Czechs of their right to defend themselves. And this was cowardice in the eyes of Hitler. He said, they're afraid. They're afraid. I can get more, right? That's what Machiavelli's saying here. This is the point. In other words, they've uncovered and they can take away other things from you and will get more inflamed against you, since he esteems you less. In the other party, you will find colder defenders in your favor, right? Since it seems to them that you are weak and cowardly. So if it's worse, your own side looks at you, oh my God. In many ways, you could have had, people even say that if the Allies acted more forcefully, Mussolini would not have sided with Hitler. Okay. As early as 35, 36, Mussolini really opposed it, were not on the same side with Hitler, particularly regarding Austria. Okay. That the Austrian Dollfuss party was the fascists in Austria were not pro-Nazi. They were anti-Nazi. The Nazis opposed Dollfuss and his party, and that they were allies with Mussolini. That therefore, this is what we have to understand. That therefore, other people then say, you look weak. You're gonna fall. We're gonna go with you, right? That's because you're you will find colder defenders on your favor, since it seems to me you are weak and cowardly. But if when the wish for the adversary is uncovered, and you prepare forces at once, although they may be inferior to his, he will begin to esteem you. And since the other princes around about will esteem you more, the wish to aid you when you are under arms will come to him who would never aid you when you abandon yourself. In other words, that if you decide to fight, you go fight. Then other people who would not help you after you just gave in, now will help you. You understand? That other princes around you will esteem you more. The wish to aid you when you are under arms will come to him whom would never aid you when you abandon yourself. This is understood when you have one enemy, but when you have more of them. Now, this is understood when you have one enemy, right? But when you have more of them, to give some of a thing you possess to one of them to win him over, although war may be already declared. Again, uncovered, right? Uncovered. And to detach him from your other confederated enemies is always, in other words, you have many enemies. Well, buy one. Offer, surrender to this guy. Give in to this one. Give in to one. And therefore he becomes your defender in that sense against the other ones. This is the example of what Florence did with King Robert of Sicily, right? That they were facing a really bad enemy. They were going to get defeated. There were many people against them, so they threw them to him, and he defended them, right? That is the strategy. So let's stop here. This is a quick chapter, therefore let's do it. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below, and I'll respond to them when I see them. Like it, hit the like button. Hit the like button, please. It helps the channel. Share it. If you liked it, share it. Share it on your with your friends. Share it with your buddies and people you think might be interested on it. Share it on your social media. Share it far and wide. And if you have not subscribed, consider subscribing. So comment, like, share, subscribe. All of these increase the algorithm, and by increasing the algorithm, people more likely to come when they're searching like Machiavelli Discourses or Machiavelli, they'll come across these videos. Another thing you can do is, if you didn't like it, you can thumb down it, but say why in the comments. What I got wrong? So that way people can benefit and learn from what you have your criticism. Another thing you can do is you can follow me on social media. The links are below. You want to know more about me as a scholar. You want to know about me as an academic. You want to check out my scholarship. You can check out the academic social media links that are below the social media links. And next, if you want to contribute, want to help when I do financially in that sense, you can do so through Patreon or Subscribestar. The links are there to both those venues that you can help, contribute. Now, people will say, but you don't have many people there. Yes, I don't, and I'm suffering through the tragedy of the commons. I understand, because I do these videos and I don't do much. So, but again, you build it, things will come, right? Next thing is, if you want to, another way you can help me is by buying one of my books that are listed below. You can buy it at your local bookstore, of course, or through an intermediate online distributor like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, you name it, Book Depository, Libris, something like that, or through the publishers. And the ebooks, the ebook that's currently available can be bought on either Kindle or Apple and I think other things also, or directly by the publisher. Well, that's it. I hope you guys have a great day. We'll look at chapter 15, I think, next time, right? Yeah, 15, I think, next time, yes. So take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.